Hey y'all, so I wasn't even planning on filming tonight, but I was going through stories because I am back with more of Your Paranormal Stories. I was going through the stories and I found 3 to read. I was gonna do it tomorrow, but the stories are so crazy that I have to read them tonight. I have to. Like, no part of me can wait until tomorrow. The last story that I have seems just mind-blowing. And so I'm filming a video right now, but we're gonna get started. The first story says, 2 years of hell, sleep paralysis, a haunted house, and death. And I will tell you, this story is a little heavy. It's a very sad story. They get treated very poorly. And it does say trigger warning for suicide, self-harm, alcoholism, and death. The backstory. In 2010, I moved into a house with my mom and her fiance that they were renting. My mom and I were very close, and her new fiance was kind, loving, and caring. It was an exciting time as I was about to start high school. I want to note that this house had a closet that was locked and we had no access to open it. It had a horrible smell and we closed off the room it was in because it reeked. Shortly after we settled into our new home, things started to go awry almost immediately. My mom developed an addiction to alcohol and would often drink so much that she would stay up late, blast music, and keep me awake on school nights until 2 a.m. Her fiancé became distant, cold, and often ignored me while encouraging my mom's consumption of alcohol. I was often gaslighted and grounded, something that never happened before. I couldn't seem to do anything right, and I frequently holed myself upstairs in my room so I would have as little interaction with my mom and soon-to-be stepdad as possible. My sister became recently divorced and moved in with us, and her behavior started to change as well. She also became addicted to alcohol, and she and my mom would enable each other. I was consistently neglected and left to my own resources while they focused on getting their fix. I felt like I had no one to go to, and I started self-harming. Sleep paralysis. On the morning of October 31st, 2010, yes, really, Halloween. I know how bad that sounds. I woke up at a friend's house and I couldn't move. I tried to get up, but I was forced down. I saw my friend sleeping next to me and I tried to reach for them, but my arms couldn't move. When I tried to scream, I felt a pressure on my chest which made me feel like I couldn't even breathe. This was the first time I'd experienced sleep paralysis, and it wouldn't be the last. My sleep paralysis stuck with me every single morning for 2 years. Whether I was at home or sleeping over to friends, I could always count on waking up, unable to move. It became so common, I learned little tricks to wiggle my toes and fingers to trigger me to snap out of it and fall back asleep. Many nights I would hear a lady hum as she walked back and forth in the hallway near my room. My sister also heard this. We had several things go missing and put back in random spots. My sister and I later talked about how we both felt the house was haunted. Something about this house didn't feel right. One afternoon, I came home to an empty house, which wasn't unusual. I went upstairs and into my room when I heard a loud crash. I came downstairs. There was nothing out of the ordinary. And then there was another loud noise that seemed to come from my mom's fiance's office. It sounded like papers had been shifted and file cabinets had been aggressively opened. It was locked, so I couldn't check. I'd grabbed the house phone to call my mom and it briefly rang before going dead, despite being on the charger whenever it wasn't in use. I heard a laughing coming from my mom's bedroom. I searched frantically for another phone, and my mom advised me to get to my neighbor's house and that she was on her way home immediately. Nothing. The office was fine. The phone batteries were fully charged. There was no sign of anyone being in the house. I was grounded for making up the situation. I was ostracized and gaslighted. I don't know how to say that word properly, ostracized. I think I'm saying it right, but I don't know. One night, I thought my sister had called out my name, so I went downstairs. She and my mom were drunk. My sister told me to go back upstairs, and I refused, stating that I wanted something to eat. She insisted I go back upstairs, drunkenly aggressive. I took her glass of wine and threw the wine at her. She pinned me down onto the hardwood floors, her hands grasping my hair, and propelled me repeatedly into the ground before stabbing my back with a fork. My mom just looked at me and did nothing. Her fiancé stood there unalarmed and asked, "What did you do to piss off your sister?" This wasn't my sister. My sister was kind and caring. She was a mother. This wasn't my sister, and this wasn't my family. All the while, I'm still experiencing sleep paralysis. It got even worse when my friend's family took me to their Catholic church where I personally met with a priest. He blessed me and gave me holy water and a cross to have at my bedside. I am not religious and don't belong to any faith, but I was desperate for help. One morning I was having sleep paralysis when I felt the sensation of being dragged from my bed, which was on a high bed frame, onto the floor and into my closet. I woke up in the closet later that morning and felt sore from hitting the floor. In March of 2011, my mom, her fiancé, and my sister took a trip to another state without telling me. I was 14, alone, and I was so exhausted and scared. I told my dad and I moved in with him and my stepmom that night. It was clear my safety no longer mattered to my mom. When I called to ask where she was, I could hear her, my sister, and my mom's fiancé laughing, and I could immediately tell they had been drinking. It hasn't been the same since. I still had sleep paralysis until late 2012. Soon after I'd stopped experiencing it, my mom's fiancé died from a benign surgery he had in the 70s. My sister committed suicide, and my mom became severely arthritic. We no longer have a relationship. Oh my God. I believe that house is the root of all the horrific things that my family has gone through. I still experience sleep paralysis occasionally, typically when I notice that there's a presence of a spirit. Just like that house was haunted, I realize that I'm also haunted. Different spirits affect me for different times. Thanks for reading my story. I have plenty more spooky experiences to write about. Oh my God. Okay, I read most of that story, but I didn't really read the ending, and oh my God. Oh my God. I am so sorry. Holy shit. That is like unimaginable pain that you must have gone through. And I feel bad because I genuinely don't know what to say. Like, I feel like there's nothing I can say that helps or makes your situation any better or takes away the trauma that you have from everything that happened. I'm so sorry. We're gonna move on though. This next story says, my imaginary friend was not imaginary or alive. I've been going back and forth on whether or not this story would be interesting enough to post. I know from the title it seems like a fairly common story and occurrence. However, after rehashing the story with my mom, I've decided the story is worth telling. When I was around 4 or 5, I lived in a small rural town in Indiana. My family and I lived in an old house we rented from an elderly couple. The elderly couple lived across from us. Between us, there was a tiny park. We had a small backyard which my parents made into a vegetable garden. Behind our garden was a metal fence. The thin metal fence was worn and rusty. Its purpose was to separate our yard from the railroad tracks. Most of the story is from information my mom has told me. I was young, so I don't remember all of this. However, I do remember the feeling of heaviness that sank to the pit of my stomach whenever I looked at the railroad tracks. We hadn't lived in Indiana long, and I was still too young for school, so most of the time my mom would take me to the small park by our house and let me play. The park was very close to our house and was rarely used by anyone but us. One day while we were at the park, my mom had to grab something she left on the front porch. She wanted me to come with her, but I begged her to let me continue playing on the swing set. She caved, since she knew it would take her less than 3 minutes to grab whatever it was and she could see me the whole time. My mom only had her back turned from me for a few seconds, and when she turned around, I was still right where she left me. Except, I was talking and laughing by myself, and the swing next to me was swinging as well. At the time, she assumed in those few seconds she didn't see me, I had pushed the swing next to me to get it to start moving. After that day, I began talking about a boy named Jackson. My mom assumed I had an imaginary friend who I named after my favorite artist of all time, Michael Jackson. I can't blame her for the assumption, because it wouldn't be the first time I had had an imaginary friend. I used to claim I had a friend that was a unicorn who loved tacos, so every taco night, my parents would set down a plate for my unicorn friend. This time quickly became different. I began not wanting my mom to play with me anymore. I told her I would rather play with my friend, and I didn't want her at the park with us. She compromised with me by sitting on the porch where she could see me at all times, so I got to play by myself. It was around this time when my favorite stuffed animal, a fox, who I had very creatively named Foxy, kept going missing. I would sleep with the toy every night, only to wake up and find it in the closet or in the kitchen. I would cry to my mom about it almost daily. There were so many times when I couldn't find it by myself, so she had to help me. Foxy would end up in the strangest of places, and even places I couldn't reach or access. This began ringing some alarm bells to my mom, and she began thinking maybe my older brother was playing some kind of trick on me. When she confronted him about it, she could tell he was completely confused and had no idea what she was talking about. According to my mom, she didn't realize anything paranormal was happening until I ran outside without warning. It was dusk, and I was hollering that I had to tell Jackson something. Of course, she followed me out there and saw the same swing swinging by itself. I ran right up to it and began talking. A chill ran down my mom's spine as she watched me engage in conversation with no one. All the while, the swinging stayed at a consistent pace. There was no breeze that night, and it was the only swing that was moving. I finished up the conversation and then ran back to the house. That's when the swing jolted, as if someone had jumped off and began slowly swinging to a stop. My mom was petrified. She definitely believes in ghosts and has had many paranormal experiences herself. Yet, this was the first time she was sure one of her kids was experiencing something paranormal. She began asking me questions about Jackson. How old was he? What did he look like? My answers only caused her to feel more uneasy. I said that he was 8 years old and he would never have another birthday. I told her that he was thin, pale, and sometimes his eyes turned completely black. Our landlord's daughter, Lori, was very close to my mom. She practiced paganism and was very well versed in the occult. Naturally, my mom went to her for advice. Lori told her that maybe something was trying to attach itself to me and advised my mom that I shouldn't play at the park alone anymore. I threw a fit over this change, and my moods got darker. I began acting up more. She had Lori cleanse our house. I calmed down a bit after she cleansed. My mom thought things were going back to normal. Until a bat somehow got into our house. The bat made a beeline towards my head, uninterested in anyone else. I can somewhat remember it, and I wasn't afraid. Luckily, my dad got the bat out of the house and no one was hurt. Not even the bat. The following morning, I was all smiles, and when my mom asked me what made me so happy, I told her, Jackson said goodbye. He's gone now. He's happy. There were other paranormal occurrences in that house, but that was the last time I ever mentioned Jackson. A few months later, my mom was talking to our landlords. She brought up Jackson and the weird occurrences to them. They both went pale in the face and gave her chilling news. Quite a few years ago, an 8-year-old boy went missing. The police found his body on the railroad tracks near our house. He was playing in a field and ended up on the tracks. He was in the wrong place at the wrong time and got hit by an oncoming train. He died instantly. His name was Jackson. That's why there was now a metal fence between the houses and the tracks. Hopefully this wasn't too long or boring, but it's a story that has stuck with me my whole life. I wonder about Jackson from time to time. I hope he has peace now. Not boring in the slightest bit. That is crazy. I can just imagine being your mom and seeing you run out to the park and seeing the swing just swinging by itself and you talking to it. Like, that is so scary. That is so scary. And then it just stopping. Like once you're done with the conversation, you jump off and it just stops. That blows my mind. That's so crazy. Now this is the final story. It says, did a demon burn my childhood home down? Hey y'all, this might be long as there's a lot that goes into it. And sorry for any grammatical errors. I'm quickly writing this. To start, my name is Bella and I'm 19, and I'm pretty sure I'm living with a demonic entity. Let me start this by saying that my family has faced many paranormal happenings. My mother started to experience the paranormal when she was 20-ish, and my father was always a spiritual man and very interested in learning of Native American rituals, considering he was Native American. So safe to say he has experienced many things as well. I have always experienced things as well as all of my siblings. I'm from New York and I lived in the same house for 18 years. It was small, but it was a home. That's where I grew up and felt safe. I would like to start off the actual story by saying that I've always been sensitive to paranormal shit. I'm not a medium or anything like that. I just feel things, I guess. For example, when I was 8, my siblings and I had just gotten home from school and my mother was sitting in the living room and told us all to sit down on the couch. My father walked out of the kitchen with tears streaming down his cheeks and we all knew what we were about to hear was serious. They told us that our grandmother had passed. She was my father's mother. We never had a strong relationship with her because they lived pretty far away and there was some family trouble as well. Nonetheless, she was our grandmother and we were all pretty sad. If not purely for her passing, then for our father who this crushed totally. After telling us, our parents went off into the kitchen to talk, so us kids were on the couch watching TV. To add a bit of setting, our house was a trailer, and when he walked in, there was a couch to the right with a TV stand in front of it, and further right there are bedrooms and the bathroom. From where I was sitting, I could see perfectly into the bathroom. I happened to look up and I saw a flash of white and watched it as it twisted and formed into a person, my grandmother. I just stared at her, watching, unable to speak, and she stared right back at me. I remember her smile and the warmth I felt from it. I remember her long graying hair flowing at her side. I remember that being the first time seeing her with her hair down as it was always up in a bun. I was in shock, and I could hear her voice in my head as I'm typing this, her soft voice saying, "Tell your daddy I love him and he will be just fine." And just like that, she was gone. I was still unable to move until I heard a shriek next to me and my mom and dad came running into the room asking my sister what was wrong. She kept saying over and over, there was a lady, and naturally my parents were worried. I simply looked at my father and grabbed his hand and told him the message. I felt compelled to tell him, and he immediately broke down into tears, realizing what just happened. That was a long example, and I'm sorry for that. The main story takes place on December 7th, 2020. I used to play the Ouija board with friends here and there in my home or theirs, and sometimes it worked, sometimes it didn't. I knew better. My mother always warned me of the consequences. I would also like to add that due to previous experiences, we were already aware of the demonic entity in our home, but that's a story for another time. On this specific night, something compelled me to play the Ouija board alone, which it is very important not to do that. I did it anyways against my better judgment. It was normal at first, kind of boring. Then I made contact with it. I asked the basic questions, who are you, would you like to talk, etc. It always gave answers, and I did not like any of them. It said its age was 0 and kept spelling Beelzebub, I think, I don't know how to say that, which I do not fuck with. So I don't know if that's like a well-known demon. I don't know. I knew I was not speaking to anything good and I went to say goodbye, but the planchette kept spelling out hot over and over. Then just before it finally moved to goodbye, I swear on everything this thing said, "You will burn." And I immediately closed the session out. I didn't sleep that night. I was too terrified to sleep and thought I was indeed going to burn like it said. 2 days later, on December 9th, 2020, my family faced the worst day of our lives. It was a normal day. My mother, my niece, and I were out shopping. My stepfather and little brother were home. We did our shopping and got back home. That day, my stepfather had to get his tires changed on his car and wanted my mom to follow him in the car due to road conditions. My little brother didn't want to go, so he stayed at my grandmother's, which is right next door to our home. So in the car was my mother, my niece, and I, and in the other car was my stepfather. About 15 minutes into the drive, her phone rang and it was my cousin. She lived in the house across the street from us. She was frantic, yet trying to stay calm at the same time. "Aunt Ochi, your house is on fire." The drive home was one of the longest 15 minutes of my life. When we got close to our road, the thick black smoke was filling the air. We parked next door at my grandmother's and I went inside with my niece, and my mother and stepfather went to my aunt's house. Within 5 minutes, the whole house was up in flames. 5 minutes and my childhood home was gone. The last physical items I had of my father who passed in 2014 were gone. Everything I had known burned up in flames in front of my eyes. It took about an hour and a half for them to put out the fire due to the winds, and when it was out, my niece's mother came to pick her up. I went down to my cousin's house with everyone and got tackled in a hug by my brother, which confused me because he is not a hugger. Later that night, he told me something haunting that I will never forget. He told me that he tried to get into the house because from my cousin's house, he could see me. He said he could see me in my bedroom window and I was banging on the window trying to get out. He said I looked burnt and he could hear the screams as him and my cousin's boyfriend ran up to the house to try and get me out. He looked horrified as he said when he passed my window, I stopped banging on the window and looked down, grinning at him. He obtained a few scratches from opening the front door and the fire throwing him backwards, and they smashed my bedroom window. The look of horror on his face when he was describing me grinning at him will haunt me forever. I feel that whatever it was that was impersonating me and talking to me through the Ouija board was at fault for this fire. They never found anything that could have caused the fire, arson-wise, but something about faulty wiring in the kitchen was mentioned. I fear that this thing is still haunting my new home that was built in the same spot. I never feel safe here, and I'm always paranoid. My little brother is starting to see things here as well. If anybody has any idea on what we can do, please tell me. I'm not religious or particularly spiritual, but I'm willing to do anything at this point. Also, I'm sorry if I ramble too much or this doesn't read perfectly. The whole situation is very stressful and makes my brain foggy. I have so many other stories that I can share from my childhood and teenage years. By the way, I love your videos. And they included some pictures, but I don't know. Oh shit, I can't include them. So I'm gonna put the pictures right here. It's pretty much just the aftermath of the fire. When I started reading that story, I immediately sent it to myself to read because I was like, this is fucking insane. Like, this is absolutely insane. The fact that you used the board and it spelled hot over and over again and then told you like, you will burn, and then impersonated you in the fire to try and like lure people to, I have no words. It's just so crazy. And I know I use the word crazy a lot, but it's so crazy. But I was like, I have to tell that story. I actually have to. I have to. I had to film it tonight because I needed to read the rest of it. I needed to know. All of these stories, I was like, I have to read them all tonight because I need to know every detail of the story because I don't like reading the whole thing before my videos. I like it to be somewhat of a surprise. And so I was like, I gotta film this tonight. But that is all I have for now. I hope you guys enjoyed. If you have any other stories you want to share with me or the community, I will have my subreddit link down below. I am gonna go because I'm very hungry, and like I said, I wasn't even planning on filming this video, so I got shit to do. So I'm gonna go. I love you guys. I love you so much. Bye. I just got my hair done. Can you tell? I got a blowout, and I'm obsessed with the way that she blows out my hair. I think it looks so good. I just like sit here and play with it. That's like all I do. I was like staring at myself half the video because I was like, my hair looks so good. Also, my sister got me this sweater for my birthday. It's a Fexy sweater if you watch Euphoria. Fez and Lexi, and there's a little quote on the bottom that says, "Talking to you is one of the best parts of my whole year." And she's actually getting me a new one because this one printed really weird. She got it from Etsy. This one printed kind of weird, so it's like the text, it looks like it's like double printed. I don't know. So the lady is sending her a second one, so I'll have two. I'll have two. I don't mind it. I still really like it, but I'm getting another one, so yeah. But I really am gonna go because I really am hungry. I really would like to eat, so I'm gonna go. I love you so much. See ya!